Welcome to the Podcaz. I'm Kaz, and on the very first episode, we'll be talking about 2018. Yeah, I've been workshopping this idea for some time now, almost with a trigger back on it when EME Paradise shut down, but we'll come back in February is all I'm gonna say. Anyway, the podcast is going to be less formal, less editing intense, not to mention shorter. Occasional series I'll bring out when I'm working on a larger project like the Western Retrospective, or again, big one that's coming up in February. I might even bring on guests to discuss recent news or other topics of interest, but one step at a time. And when I say less formal, I mean that while I am scripting this introduction and an outro, the rest of this video, it's just some notes that I had written down. In any case, let's get started. 2018. Good bloody riddance. What an awful year this was. Fascists being elected in Brazil, Stan Lee is gone, Brexit continuing to be the massive mistake that everyone expected it to be, and so many horrific events that occurred south of Canada's border. Oh, you thought I was talking about video games, didn't you? No, for video games it was actually a pretty solid year, if nowhere near as impressive as 2017. Or at least it was if you divorce the medium from the hideous business practices that the industry has adopted. Rampant microtransactions in AAA releases, even if they are just cosmetics, excessive crunch time, the crushing of any and all efforts to preserve the medium when 99% of publishers have zero respect for the history of the medium. How do you lose the code to Kingdom Hearts? The list goes on, and while I hate to be a downer since, again, 2018 was hot garbage in just about every other regard, yeah, there's been a lot of lows accompanying the many highs that 2018 has had to offer. That said, if we divorce this anti-union, anti-consumer, anti-preservation medium from the art, I'd say 2016 through 2018 might be three of the most consistently solid years in video gaming. Now, admittedly, I didn't play as many games as I wanted to in the year. I wasn't joking about my backlog during the Smash Brothers video, so there will be some major omissions, big and small. Don't expect the Banner Saga 3 or Red Dead Redemption 2 to make it in. I'm still working my way through the second Banner Saga game, actually. That said, I have played enough, and I do want to talk about some of my favorite releases that came out this year, or last year rather, so that's what I'm gonna do. Up first, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. I already said it in my Super Smash Bros. Video, but at this point you're either on board with Super Smash Bros. Or you're not. I'm all for more Super Smash Bros., and this is easily the best entry they've ever made. That's right, come at me, Melee fans. Your game doesn't have a monarchical croc or the most extensive single-player content courtesy of the World of Light. Also, more than 3 competitively viable characters, I think. Look, I don't know what the current meta is for Ultimate. I just play these games for fun and the occasional field attempt to play competitively, and Ultimate is fun. A lot of great stages, a lot of great items, a lot of great characters, pretty much everything that I could ever ask for in a Smash game. Next up, Civilization 6, Rise and Fall. Okay, I need to be serious for a second. Do not play Civilization 6 if you value your free time. This is not a joke. It is an all-consuming monstrosity that will just see you sink so much time into this one game. Now you might be saying to yourself, wasn't Civilization 6 released not in 2018? Yes, but its new expansion, Rise and Fall, was, so yeah, that absorbed even more of my free time. I put up a screenshot of how much time I've sunk into this game, but quite frankly, I'm too embarrassed to show just how much time has been spent on this one game. And to be fair, it's not been a bad time. There's more complexity to management with the new world age mechanics, how loyalty forces you to think ahead and further plan out where you're to build your cities. It's a smart expansion that builds upon Civilization 6's more city-centric development of your empire. The only other thing that I'm going to say is that I'm really dreading the day the next expansion comes out if Rise and Fall is any indication of how Gather and Storage is going to be. Seriously, friends, don't let friends play Civilization. Kick them in the face. Or play Rocket League, I guess. Probably safer that way. Up next, Valkyria Chronicles 4. It is so good to have a new one of these that releases worldwide, because we never got 3. Valkyria Chronicles has always been a favorite of mine. The more involved combat emphasizes unit positioning in a manner that few other tactical games do. 4 builds some really challenging scenarios with this pseudo-real-time framework, especially if you're like me and you like beating each map with as few turns as possible, not to mention an excellent risk-reward addition with the new Grenadier class. If Raz wasn't the absolute worst throughout the entire game, not just the scene where he sexually assaults a fellow soldier, this might have been a contender for my game of the year. That and the story is a big step down from the first game. If Valkyria Chronicles was a fantasy facelift for World War II, right down to including concentration camps, then 4 is an attempt to both sides World War II. And of all the people that decided to go after in that time period that they could have gone after, they chose Albert Einstein. I'm going to say this for a future review because it doesn't work at all within the context of the game or the history of World War II. It's really stupid. The way I'd put it is, the original Valkyria Chronicles, it has the better story while 4 has the better design and gameplay. Definitely recommend if you need your tactics fixed and a charming art style, just skip any cutscenes with that walking, talking rasshole. Up next, Digimon's story CyberSleuth, Hacker's Memory. Did you play the first CyberSleuth? If you did, you're probably going to like Hacker's Memory. It's basically the same game, but with a much better story. Or at least it's better by Digimon standards. It doesn't come close to Tamers, even though that's an anime, but I digress. While it's not necessarily profound, Hacker's Memory does examine the difficulty of a non-traditional family having to deal with treating a life-threatening condition without proper access to healthcare, how topical is what I'd say if I was living in America, and the toll that it takes on everyone. It's not something I ever thought I would get from a Digimon game, but it's here, and the more I thought about it, the more I appreciated that it is. Again, not exactly what I would expect from Digimon, but I'm glad it exists. Also, the battle system from the first game continues to be great. Cannot wait to see what they do with the proper sequel. So, more of the same? Yes it is, but what it is still great. Finally, there's my game of the year, Into the Breach. This is a lightning in a bottle sort of game where everything just comes together so well and will, in all likelihood, never be replicated ever again. I don't want to go too in-depth, definitely going to save the best bits for a full review one of these days, but to summarize, it's basically Edge of Tomorrow but in pixels, and you can play as somebody aside from Tom Cruise. Despite having little in the way of dialogue, the gameplay and design do a magnificent job of telling the story of a world where humanity is barely holding on, and how many more times they'll have to keep holding on as one timeline ends in failure, and another one starts with that same spark of hope that this time will be different. I haven't loved a tactics title as much as I love Into the Breach since Fire Emblem Awakening, frankly, and as much as I enjoyed that game when I initially played it, it hasn't held up as well with repeated playthroughs. Into the Breach, on the other hand, has. It's challenging, it smartly mirrors its gameplay and narrative, and is endlessly replayable. It is a perfect game for the Switch. And yeah, I know it was released on PC, but again, perfect for the system. It's for that and many other reasons why it's my game of the year. An absolute standout in the sewer-infested slog of a year. Again, generally, video games actually had it pretty good. If you ignore the business practices. So that wraps up things for the first ever podcast. Let me know what you thought about it and what you'd like to see in a future episode. Or for that matter, if you want to see another episode. Until next time, game on, my friends!